Hi, and welcome to VIBEZ Daily. This is a daily devotional curated by VIBEZ Church to help you practice the way of Jesus and be all that God has called you to be. You have joined us for our year-long series titled Devoted. Acts 2:42 tells us that the followers of Jesus were devoted to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to breaking of bread, and to prayer. This podcast was created to provide context and commentary for what you read each day. Just before our friends begin discussing today's reading, we want to invite you not only for fellowship, but for prayer as well. We have created the VIBE Daily Chat Group to offer you fellowship and a community where you can state your observations, ask questions about the reading or the podcast. You can join us by downloading the VIBEZ Church app in your favorite app store. Click Join the Conversation and join us today. And finally, we hope that you can join us for prayer. Prayer happens Monday through Friday, and more information on that can be found on the VIBEZ Church app under prayer. Now, let's begin our conversation on today's reading.
All right, welcome back to day 25 of our devoted series of the VIBEZ Daily podcast. So excited to have you back here. I am excited to be back with my friends, my wife Victoria here, Shameeka and Dylan.
That's my wife.
Yeah, we're so good. Glad to be back here. We are going to continue to Exodus. I won't belabor the point because we kind of left off in the middle of the story yesterday at the end of 12, but we're really here in chapter 13 in the middle of the Israelites leaving Egypt. So 13 kind of picks up with right after they've kind of done Passover and I've had the opportunity to observe that. Anything that you guys saw in this beginning of 13 here as they really kind of established some other things. There's consecration. There's some other things that kind of happen here. Anything that jumped out to you guys in 13?
I'm just fascinated that he wrote all of this and remembered everything that needed to be written down. So much.
Yeah. Was the consecration them doing like a circumcision, or was this separate or different? Because at first I was wondering if it was circumcision, like if they had stopped that whole practice, because, you know, Abraham, like him and his generations, like they were very like set on like, we're going to make sure that we get our boys circumcised and everything. But I wondered if this was more so like just kind of give them back to me, like kind of that Isaac kind of thing of like give your firstborns back to me.
Yeah, it was more of a redeeming of that son through like a sacrifice, a more of a setting apart that son. Then consecration was done for every boy, regardless. So yeah, it was more so like almost think about it as like a tenth of your we think of like a tithe and things of that nature, right? That we just kind of give back our first back to God. It was almost to say that son belonged to God specifically.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Anything else? Anything else in this? Because again, it goes into some other instructions for them. So anything else that you guys saw in the beginning of 13 here?
I do like how they're talking about just carrying out these traditions and these different things that you do. In verse 8, it says, on that day, tell your son, I do this because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. So again, God is wanting his people in the generations to remember this whole thing that happened, like him saving them from the Egyptians and passing that down to their sons so that their sons could be responsible of passing it down to their families as well. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I think this is the first opportunity for them to remember, just like how like this is. I just love. I gotta go in the future a little bit to today, right? The old covenant of communion, right? And then now we have communion where we remember Jesus dying on the cross for our sins, and just being intentional about remembering. Obviously, we still celebrate the Passover today, but I just love how he's just intentional. Like, man, don't forget. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do say that a lot. Don't you know?
Not me. Not me.
I be trying to figure out if y'all know what I mean.
Yeah, I love it that he even just takes him back to that promise of Abraham.
Yeah.
Like, I am bringing you in verse probably like 5. He's like, I'm bringing you into this land that I swore to your fathers. And he uses the same verbiage, just land of milk and honey. And so I love that this is something that they know. Like they have known this history. They know that this covenant, this promise. And for God to like once again reiterate, like, this is what I'm doing now. I'm bringing you into this land now. Yeah. Like I love that he's keeping them in the loop. Like I say, the Lord does a lot of speaking in Exodus. So I love how like forward he is.
For sure. Especially because when I do think about even the life of Jesus, how they knew that the Messiah was coming, but then when the Messiah was there, it's like, nope, a lot of people didn't believe it. So like that reassurance of like, hey, this is what was talked about from generations before, and this is actually what's happening now. You guys are a part of this. Like, you're here now. It's good for them to know that.
Yeah. Also, like, go ahead. I was gonna say, I love how he covers ground as well, because as humans we just forget stuff. Like, I forgot what I did yesterday. I ain't gonna lie to you, and we had church yesterday. You know what I mean? And I think God is just like, I don't want y'all to forget this thing that I've done for y'all. Like, this is something that I'm very specific as to the things that you need to do, the things that you need to gather, what you're gonna do, how you're gonna celebrate, because I don't care how many generations from now, you need to remember this day, this moment.
And it's so funny because they're in this moment and he's reassuring them this. But then like a couple verses later, a couple days later, they forget and they backtrack and they're like, he's like, I'm taking you to the promised land. They're like, we out here to die.
This don't look like the promise.
Which is a good transition. I mean, ultimately they move on, and I do always appreciate this particular passage and this part in chapter 13 because again, this is kind of written in hindsight at the point, but like for the Israelites, they didn't understand exactly where they were going and why they were going a certain direction. But you know, it calls out that like they're making this trip, and God does, in his verse 17 tells us, like, God did not lead them along the road to the land of the Philistines, like, even though it was nearby, for God said, the people will change their minds and return to Egypt if they face war. Now, like, I just love how, again, just God just knew his people. Like, he just knew his children. He's like, look, even though I just did what I did, I just proved that I am the baddest in the land. Like, nobody can do what I can do. They still gonna doubt me if they run into these Philistines. Like, even then, just to face war, they'll want to go back to that. And so, like, it's just so insightful because they take the long way. But it's because God was protecting them from something. And again, I just think about how often in our lives, right? Like, we take detours, we go the long way, and, you know, we're wondering, God, why is it taking so long? Why am I going this way? But then we look back and realize, like, God was actually protecting us from something. And if we had gone the way we thought was the best and most optimal way, we probably would have ran into something and never made it in the first place. So
man, that's definitely what I got out of that scripture. I'm like, man, we really be believing that the short route is the best route for us. And like, just for God to know and foresee beforehand what was to come and like how it would be detrimental for us, like, that just shows like his like love for us and his how sovereign he is. But also like that long route, it don't be fun. It isn't fun. And then oftentimes I feel like, kind of to the Israelites' point, sometimes the longer route can give you more space and opportunity to doubt. Like, it's like so much time has passed and like I still haven't seen this promise. Like, sometimes you don't even get a glimpse of it, and you're just having to, you know, stand on his word, and how easy it is to become fearful or doubtful or to want to turn back and just go back because it just doesn't feel good.
I think the ironic part for me in here is that like he didn't want them to be doubtful about like encountering war. But in that next verse, it says that they went up out of the land equipped for battle. Like, they were in battle formation and they were equipped for battle, but yet they were going to be scared if a battle came. You know, so it's like they had to look. Like, they looked the part. But like you said, inside their hearts, the Lord knew that they was going to be scared and they didn't really fully still trust him.
I think it's just reminds me of just my own relationship with God. Like we know that the pillar of cloud and pillar of fire represents God's presence, and the fact that like they take the detour and they start complaining and all those things, right? It's just like we get so caught up in that promise or just the complaints of the wilderness and not realize like God is with me.
Yeah.
Like God is guiding me. Like I'm, even though like I have these doubts, I'm like still following you, low-key, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like this cloud should be enough for me to be okay.
Yeah.
To know that I'm okay. Like
Yeah.
I have the history of Egypt behind me, and the same person that did all those plagues is with me, and I don't understand why as humans we have still this fear or doubt or whatever the case may be, and the cloud is right there.
Yeah. And now we got the Holy Spirit living in us.
Yeah.
Like we're the temple, and yet we still fear. I think that's real.
Like you would think that by being guided by God, right, that they would have the assurance that they were always in the right place.
Yes.
Right, because they were with this fire and this pillar of of cloud. That like you would think that would be enough. Like, but as you said, there was still this doubt and this question, despite knowing if I am with Him, I am in the right place. And yeah, you're right. That it is amazing how we still live that way to this day in so many ways.
And if I was a Philistine seeing a group of people walking and I see a cloud and I know I've heard the rumors, I'll be scared.
Yeah. Yeah. But back to kind of being in the right place. I mean, He puts them specifically. It's very interesting that He places them specifically stuck between the Red Sea and ultimately Egypt as they kind of pursue Him, right? So He gives them an exact instruction of where to be. Lord tells Moses to turn back and camp in front of Pi-hahiroth.
Come on, you better say that name.
I just think that like you brought too much attention to it. I might have said it wrong. No, that's what you just gotta say with confidence fast.
That's right. I believed it.
Yeah, and so He puts them exactly where they need to be, or in this specific spot. And when He does this, it gives Pharaoh the motivation and the idea to actually pursue them. So. Anything in this story as the Egyptians come to pursue the Israelites, and of course they ultimately cross the Red Sea. We've all read it to this point, but anything in this story that you guys thought was interesting?
Before we dive into that, I do want to back up a little bit to talk about because we were just kind of talking amongst ourselves about this, but I can imagine just there's already a lot going on. Like you trying to get 600,000+ people out, and it's like this big escape that's happening, and yet Moses remembers to bring Joseph's body. Like in my mind, I'm like, who got time to carry somebody's bones?
I thought about that.
Like literally, like there's so many children. There's other things that you're having, and they plundered the land, so they got all these possessions and stuff with them. Yet he still remembered Joseph. Like request to like make sure y'all take my body with me when I leave. Like y'all leave, like in Joseph foreshadowing that there would be a deliverance and there would be a way out for them. Seeing that all come like full circle was really cool. But I'm like, you're a real one to go back and really take them bones with you for real.
Yeah,
which is honorable. It is honorable.
Definitely.
But sorry, I just wanted to point out.
No, I really just thought, like, how does that work? Like, this chaos, this mayhem. And it's like, oh, excuse me, Egyptian servants. I need to get some bones. Like, I think it's located in the, like, what is this? What was the process? I don't understand. Yeah, I had the same thought though.
That's intentionality for sure.
It is.
Yeah, but I love that. The Lord was telling Moses. And verse 3 that like that Pharaoh was going to say like, oh, the wilderness has shut them in, and Pharaoh actually thought that they were trapped and stuff, and But I just think it's only God to do the unthinkable. Like, we're like, I mean, there's no way out. We think there's no way out. And, like, he just opens up doors, opens up waters. Like, this is something they had never seen before, right? And so it's like, to them, this was like a brick wall. Like, this was something that was immovable. But, like, God is continuing to show them, like, yes, I reign over the waters too. Like, yes, I reign over this. Like, yes, I reign over everything.
Yes.
Everything, follows the command of my voice. Like, so nothing is a problem for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing you told Sarah, right? Nothing is impossible for me.
Yeah.
Just before.
Yeah. And to know that, like, Pharaoh took his best chariots. Like, he got the best of the best with him on this trip to get them. But also, I think we mentioned this probably sometime back in Genesis, but seeing how this was that breaking point for them to be like, I'll go back to being a slave.
Yeah.
Like, God, what is you doing? Like, them crying out to the Lord and saying, like, literally saying it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. Like, and that's verse 12. Like, that's really a slap in the face to God.
Yeah.
Like, to be like,
That's how it be.
yeah, like, it, like, I know you had this big old plan and this scheme and everything, but it's garbage. Like, you should have kept me where I was. Like, I know you think you love me enough to want to get me out, but we was better off. Like, I'd rather had did that. That's really insulting, because God did have this promise of, like, but I have more for you.
Yeah.
Like you said, like a land filled with milk and honey, and like, y'all about to surpass even what y'all was able to see and gain before. And yeah, just hearing their heart in this moment is just like, dang. But I mean, water's scary though. Drowning?
Yeah.
I'm about to go out.
Do you swim, baby?
I do.
Okay, we good.
But still,
I just need to make
you
sure.
get tired enough.
Yeah, I mean,
That's true.
We talk about a seed, not a pool.
Yeah,
okay.
we
Get a cramp real quick.
I can't take a little break and just get out on the side. Like,
Yeah, but I do think that it definitely speaks to, like, this entire process, right, is very much about the Israelites learning God, like, and knowing who God is and understanding. And so, like, I can give them a little grace here that, like, they have never known a God like him.
yeah.
Right? Like, they have never known a power like God, what God is. Like, we have, again, the benefit of hindsight. We got an entire Bible that has taught us so much about what God is and what he's capable of. I mean, he could literally come into form of human and live and die and be resurrected. And, like, I mean, we have all of this insight into the power and might of our God. And yet, let's just be honest, even we still doubt God.
Oh, yeah.
Some things, right? Like,
Yeah.
despite all the evidence that we have, we still doubt when, we don't know how this next bill gonna be paid, right? Like, we just think about, like, little stuff that just, like, in the grand scheme of things, God can't give us $150. Like, I don't know how it's gonna work out, Lord. Like, but we have all of this. Yet for them, they are just coming to know who God is.
That's
and
good.
So again, it makes sense that when they're faced with the sea and Egypt, and those are their two options, that they do feel like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like, and they're just like, I don't know. This guy did some amazing things. I don't know if he can do this, right? Like, he just did a whole bunch of stuff.
Where's the limit?
Yeah, but I ain't seen him separate a sea before, right? Like, what is it that he'll do? But I love, one of my favorite verses, probably, like, this challenges me all the time. I've read this so many times, and it just always sticks out to me, is verses 13 and 14, where Moses finally speaks to the people after they've been grumbling and complaining. And as you said, talking about it would have been better to die. Verse 13 says, Moses said to the people, "Don't be afraid. Stand firm and see the Lord's salvation that he will accomplish for you today." This is the part that I always love. But it says, "For the Egyptians you see today, you will never see again." And in verse 14, the Lord will fight for you and you must just be quiet. But, like, I just love that he really emphasizes that, like, God is going to just solve this problem permanently. Like, it's gonna be done. And I think that was necessary, because I think for the Israelites, they probably would have always lived in this constant fear that Egypt was coming back.
Yeah.
Like at some point that Egypt was going to come back and try to get them, no matter where they went. Like, you know, let's not act like Canaan is on the other side of the world, right? Like where they're headed. Like Canaan is close enough to Egypt. If Egypt said, we want to go get these Israelites, they could come get the Israelites. And I think it was important for God to say, look, I need you to know that your past is done. Like where I've taken you from is over. It's closed. That door is shut. Like you're not going back, and it's gonna be over. And that's what he says, is that these Egyptians you see, that you will never see again. Like it is over and done. And I love that just promise and that confirmation to them. Like that's the reason I'm doing this, is because I'm trapping Pharaoh. I'm bringing him out here because I want you to see that this is over. Yeah, this is really over. Yeah, and they're not coming back for you.
I think it's also just an opportunity for us to be encouraged whenever we see a Red Sea. Like, okay, this is an opportunity for God to just show up and go crazy. Like, only God could split the Red Sea. Only God could do something like this. I love also, like, the flex that God has. I remember just thinking about how good I was. Yes, I was good. I was good at 2K. So good to the point where I would like purposely play horrible in the fourth quarter just to come back and win at the end. But for him to like just have the Israelites camp at the Red Sea, like camping is a host. Like you gotta set up a tent, set up a fire, like you know what I'm saying? Like you camping. Yeah. Just for the Egyptians to have enough time to gather their stuff and their belongings, to pull up with their horses and chariots, just be like, all right, bet. Now I'm gonna just like collapse them in.
The grand finale.
That's a flex, man.
Yeah, definitely.
I do love, he said that he could have brought them to the Red Sea, opened it up, walked through, but he let them settle and get settled, and then see like how close do they have to be that you can see them coming, like, oh, they're on their way. And then, like I said, we have to get a couple million, however much of us up. And where are we going?
And everybody went through that scene.
Yes.
But I just love in verse 19 how like the angel of God who was before them now moved behind them, right?
Yeah.
And it stood between them and the Egyptians. And I'm just like, come on, Lord, like you be repositioning yourself. Like, and we don't even know what you up to, but like, and then later on it just says like when they were trying to like go through, this is verse 25, go through right behind them through the sea, that like that they their chariot wheels and stuff, like it drove heavily, it was getting clogged and stuff. So like not only was like he ushering the Israelites before him, like he was like slowing down the Egyptians behind and creating like, you know, problems with their chariots. And I just love it because they're just like, let's get out of here because the Lord fights for them.
That's what verse
Which
14.
is what Moses had literally said, like the Lord gonna fight for us.
You only have to be silent.
Yes.
I love the like going back to the idea of God versus God. Like this is actually happening, like God versus Pharaoh. Like, all right, this is me and you. I'm gonna let my children go. I'm gonna stand behind and I'm about to wait for you to pull up to this Red Sea and we finna fight. And we finna see who's gonna win. I just look like you pull up, man. I'm right here. Like this is, I've been waiting for this moment. You know what I'm saying?
But you know, it's crazy though, because I was thinking about how it pointed out how the sea was there was a wall of water on the right and left. Like these Egyptians was so determined that like that didn't even scare them enough to be like, all right, let's turn around actually and like go back. Like no, they still were like seeing all this happening before them. Like, hey, we still gonna have to get them.
You like, stubborn.
So stubborn, right?
I'd be so mad if I was following Pharaoh. Like, I'd be hot if he be like, and go in there. And I'm like, what? No. Like this is a bad idea.
Like, seriously.
Terrible idea.
Like, seriously.
I'd be like, yes, sir.
Man, oh man. Exactly.
Man.
That is funny.
That's good. So, yeah, I mean, God does it. Like, again, we've all read it, and, you know, even you who are listening and watching, you've read it. He does just that. He parts the Red Sea. They chase them in. They get across, and he closes it. And, yeah, I just love that he just drowns. You know, it drowns all of them. Yeah. Everybody that went in and pursued. And it's again, obviously an amazing demonstration of God's might and his power. Yeah. And so, similar to Moses, I mean, not Moses, I'm sorry, because I did this when we were talking about Noah. I did the same thing. Noah called him Moses. Yeah. But similar to Noah, when he comes off the ark, right, the first thing he does is build an altar and worship. Yeah. The Israelites came across and was just like, all right, let's sing a song.
The song ain't rhyme or nothing, but they said we about to sing this song to the Lord.
We're going to worship.
Yes. So good.
Yeah, here in chapter 15, anything that you guys that stuck out about their song and kind of what they sang here? Anything you found interesting?
Yeah, the song itself was amazing. But I love in verse 2 how it said, "The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation." Mm-hmm. Like, that part shows that, like, there was this, like, these things that had taken place in the Israelites' heart to where they had to choose God for themselves. Like, he's become my salvation, but also for them to furthermore say he is my God. Like, now it's not like the God of Abraham, Isaac, like all the like, he is my God and I will praise him, my father's God, and I will exalt him. Like, I just love how now God has become more personal to them. It's just beautiful to see that.
Yeah.
Did they come up with this off the dome? I'm just
That's what it sounded like.
Bars.
I was like, how did I was trying to imagine them just all being together. Like, did somebody just start saying a line and then somebody else start saying a line? Hilarious. Or did Moses say all this stuff and then they just repeated after him? Like, how did this all get orchestrated? But it was beautiful nevertheless.
I would like to park in verse 14. I think it's very interesting that they pointed out, like, the people have heard, they tremble. Pangs have seized the inhabitants of Philistia. And I think it's really interesting because before they would have been too afraid to approach the Philistines. But now they're talking about how the Philistines have heard about what God has done and that there's terror over there. And they even go on to talk about the chiefs of Edom, which we know is the descendants of Ishmael. And in Moab and Canaan, like how dread and terror is on all these different places. And so it's like it even just took the opening of the Red Sea to give them this confidence of, like, oh yeah, like, we walking with our heads up high because like God has done this for us and with us. And so people around us are scared, which before, if they would have taken the short route, right, like they would have come up against the Philistines and been too afraid, but now they have, like, this confidence about them.
No, it's a beautiful song. Just, and again, it's specific. It's but yeah, I do love just that point that you guys have made, and I think it's a part of what's resonating so much with me. It's just that personalization of their relationship with God, because again, we talked about it a little earlier. Like, that is what God is trying to do right now, is help the people understand who he is. And I think I love that there's just that realization, and it is something I think we can all relate to. Like, we could probably remember that moment that God became real to us, right? That it wasn't just the stories we'd heard anymore. It wasn't just that God that my mama knew or my dad knew, right? Like, it wasn't just, that God I heard about in church every week, but there was that moment where, like, he became real. Like, he became my God, my Father, my Lord, and it's just awesome to kind of see that happen for them.
And I thought it was interesting too for them to point out Aaron's sister Miriam. Like, out of all the people, this is a time where they shine light on her, where I didn't even know they had a sister prior to this, and saying that that she's a prophet.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was really cool to just kind of highlight that, and how all the women just kind of followed after her with the different timbrels and like dancing and like worshiping and stuff. And so, yeah.
I think it's interesting that they kind of give her a name at this point, because I mean, we know she's the one that helps to facilitate Moses being nursed by her mother.
So that is the same.
Yeah. So like, it's his sister. That ultimately helps to get that arrangement to happen, but they don't call her Miriam back then. Right?
Yeah.
We don't get her name until this point, which is interesting.
And they more so back then referred to her as Moses' sister. So to hear them say Aaron's sister, I'm like, okay, is there some kind of half sister? Kind of like, is this a sister that's more of Aaron's and not Moses? Maybe Moses is a half sister, but that is interesting. Like, that's the same woman. Like, we do get to see her name.
So then they go from there, and we got another challenge they've run into here. And again, so it doesn't take as much as they just made this beautiful song. They still are crying out to the Lord. So they get to Mara, and anything that just was interesting to you guys about and we can kind of take this even into 16, because they kind of have these two different challenges with provision, some of their basic needs being met, water and food. Now that they're out here in the wilderness, anything that just jumps out to you guys about what God does for the Israelites?
I just see still lessons to be learned for the Israelites. Like you talked about provision, I see a lesson being learned for the Israelites at the Red Sea as a rescuer, God the rescuer, God the redeemer, God the salvation person. And then now they need to know that God is a provider. Like he provides water in a bitter place, right? I think like just seeing that intentionality is cool.
Yeah. But it's also interesting that like after this whole worship session where, again, we talked about how they identified God as being their God and this deliverer, how they go back to their ways of grumbling and going to Moses. And it's like, I don't think they understood, like they had the opportunity to like, you can go to God yourself and like pray to him and like request and ask him to provide. And so just seeing their the way that they handled that, it's like, okay, we're going back to the whole grumbling and like, you know, ready to start a riot because we hungry. We've been fasting for 3 days. Like we've been fasting for 3 days. We ain't had no water. And I just thought it was something significant about those 3 days that they traveled in the desert without finding water. That stuck out to me.
Yeah, I think I was thinking it was just like he took them from an abundance of water to this dry wilderness.
Yeah.
Like you said, and it only took 3 days. But you said 3 days is significant in so many ways throughout the Bible. But
yeah,
it didn't take long. But then I think it's really interesting if then he gets to this like verse 25 where like the Lord is going to make a statute and a rule and he's going to test them. And he's like, okay, if you listen to my voice and if you do, you know, what is right and you follow my commandments and keep all these rules, I think it's really interesting that he says, like, I won't put any of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord your healer. And I was just like, I wonder, it's like, how that works, like, that a lot of these physical afflictions that the Egyptians, like, you know, they encountered were because of disobedience to the Lord, or you know, as like curses almost, you know, from the Lord. So he's like, I'm gonna like even restore your bodies and keep you guys whole, like physically, if you obey me, which I don't think I've seen this yet.
Yeah. And I thought even just hearing like God saying like to keep his commands, I feel like it was that setting up of the commandments that are to be given later. So yeah.
That's good. But yeah, like I said, there's the water issue, then it becomes a food issue as we get into 16, which is our last chapter for today. Yeah, anything here, this kind of covers the entire chapter, really, the back and forth over needing food. Yeah, anything that you guys thought was interesting?
Can I just pause at verse 12 though real quick on chapter 15? I think it's interesting that there was 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. And when Jacob came, he came with his, he had his 12 sons.
Yeah.
Jacob, Israel, 12 sons. And then there were 70 people in his household that he brought with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was interesting that those numbers were like, resembling his 12 sons and like the 70 people that came with him into Egypt.
Yeah, that is
verse
cool.
27. Yeah.
Good call out.
Yeah.
Here we go again with in chapter 16 with we got on seen the Red Sea parted. Like y'all went through it and they're grumbling and they said, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt.
Yeah.
Like
Over some food, fam.
they said there we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. Like we was good. Yeah, we in the desert, we starving.
Yeah, and isn't that just like us though?
Yeah.
Like, and Victoria probably know where I'm going with this because we talk about this all the time. But like, isn't it just like us to just completely forget like the persecution we endured and like how bad it was, right? Like they're the ones who cried out to God about what the oppression they experienced while they were in Egypt, right? But they have forgotten so quickly how bad their past was that like they're looking at their present situation and almost
Equating it as worse.
Yeah, as worse, right? They're almost like, I don't want to say idolizing, but just like having selective memory on their past. Yeah. And again, I've experienced this in my personal life, but like that I can look back at certain seasons and look at them as like the good old days, and then like just completely forget like how trash my life really was. Like, and I feel like it's so funny to see that as you said, they're seeing this past as like, man, we were living good. Like we had what we needed, our needs were met, we had what we wanted. And just completely missing like how bad their life was. And it was so bad that they cried out to God. Yeah. Which I just think is crazy.
Yeah. And I think it just shows too like how easy it is to covet something. Like to really desperately like desire something or what somebody else had or even what you had in a previous season. So this is like, again, we get to see ourselves in a text through this situation as crazy as we're like, y'all wow, but no, like we experienced this ourselves.
And I'm gonna lie, I kind of feel the Israelites, y'all. When I'm hungry, like things don't make sense. Like my mind doesn't work the same. Like I can't even think. Like it's that bad. And I just miss a snack. Like this is like 3 days. I'm just
What's that commercial? The Snicker commercial? Is it Snickers?
Yeah, like 3 days and not eating. And it's hot. I've been walking.
That's
it's
true.
not like I'm just sitting around. Like I'm exerting energy here.
You got to be around people.
Yeah,
people get exhausted too.
That's common.
Yeah,
but hangry.
Well, how you doing? I'm doing good.
Exactly. But I love that the Lord gives provision, right? And I really love that He gives a double portion on the 6th day so that they could observe the Sabbath. And so once again, He is coaching them and teaching him His ways.
Yep.
What's important. Like even now, like I'm gonna give you enough. And I think this is probably the first time I noticed that like this is when He gives them both quail and manna. So normally I just remember like, oh, just manna from heaven, but this time He gives them both.
Meat.
I'm gonna give you meat for the evening. I'm gonna give you bread for the morning. And I love that they have first kept on saying you're grumbling against Moses, and then it was like you're grumbling against Moses and Aaron, but now they flipped it. In verse 7 and in verse 8, where they're like, your grumbling is not against us. It's against the Lord. So at this point, you're not complaining to me. You're complaining to God. And so I think sometimes for me, I have to even think back and be like, okay, when I get in these seasons and I'm just complaining, like, this is not what I want and not where I want to be and all that, like my grumbling isn't because of the job or the family or the place I'm living or like that grumbling goes against God, especially if I know I'm where God wants me to be.
That's good.
And oh man,
that's good.
That's a word. Man, I was gonna say I do love, like, again, how God is having to be specific with these instructions. He's like, don't do too much. Like, don't try to take more than what you need. Like, he's really, again, he's trying to show himself to be drivers for them, to be a God that provides, and making sure that they know that, like, ultimately I'm still trying to get the glory. Like, I don't want you to feel like you were able to survive because you went ahead and got enough for 2 weeks.
Right.
Like, he's like, no, like, every day you need to depend and rely on me to provide for you. And don't go overboard. Like, and we do see where it does end up happening, even down to the point of the rebellion against Sabbath on the 7th day. I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but where it does talk about how he told them to sit down, don't go nowhere, don't leave. Like, on the 7th day, like, just rest. This is why on the 6th day I'm gonna give you enough for both days. Yet there were still people that went out and still tried to get some on the 7th day.
I think it's also like for them to do that because I would assume they had to work 7 days in the week. You know what I'm saying? Like, that they, again, it just, I'm just hearing this theme of just like lessons in the, like, there, you are learning the principles of God in the wilderness. Is like, you might hate it, you might not like it might be uncomfortable, you might even reminisce on the good times or whatever the case may be, but God is teaching you these principles of, like, this might be something new that you've never done before or aren't used to.
And I mean, it's good because it really does set the tone for, I mean, just be honest, the next few weeks of our reading is going to be like that, right? Because we're getting to Leviticus next. And that's, a book of law. And, a lot of us will read that today and feel like it's a little overkill, like some of what God requires of the Israelites. But to your point, man, he is trying to teach what equates to a pagan people what it means to be holy and set apart, like what it means to be different and to be the people that God has chosen. And so he does go through extreme lengths of saying, like, this is what it looks like and what you have to do. And yes, I'm going to be that extreme to the point that I'm not even going to provide you food on the 7th day because, like, I want you to learn this and understand this, because it takes that. It takes all of that, extra attention and care and repetition to say, like, I need to teach you that you're not in Egypt anymore. Right? Like, you're not in Egypt anymore. I don't care what Pharaoh had you doing. I am God, and I am now who's in charge, and I need you to, like, learn what it means to be different and set apart.
And I feel like we have enough history by now to know that, like, what it looks like for God to put his trust in the people to, like, carry out his commandments and his ways, and letting them be, so to speak, and it just going completely left. Like, coming back and it's like, oh, like, y'all done forgot about me. Like, y'all done decided to do things how y'all want to do, and kind of like how we saw with Sodom and Gomorrah, like, y'all wilding. And so I do see how God is like, I'm making sure that my hand is so closely and tightly on y'all, because I need y'all to know that y'all know that y'all know that y'all know. Like, this is for real, need to be you guys' lifestyle for the generations to come, and even while you're here. Like, he not letting up.
And I love that he is, like, starting here with the Sabbath, because like, even back in creation, like, he established the Sabbath. Like, we weren't created to work 7 days. It's even, we were created to work 6 days and to rest. And so even them trying to work 7 days is going against how he has created us to be, operate in function in this world. And I love, like you said before, like, they want to be their own providers. And he's like, no, I created you to only work 6 days. So just trust and believe that if this is how I created things to be, that I will provide for you. I love how in verse 18, it was just like, well, whoever gathered a lot, they had nothing else left at the end of the day. But those who gathered a little bit, they didn't have any lack. And I was just like, look at this good God. Like, this greed is gonna get you nowhere.
Yeah.
But this reliance on like, Lord, I'm trusting that it's gonna be enough, Lord. Like that, the oil ain't gonna run out.
Yeah. And I think that's so applicable for today, because I think it is easy to be like workaholics or just knowing that, hey, like I have a goal that I'm trying to reach, or I know what's ahead, and so let me just go ahead and push through and try to work 7 days and not rest. And like, I mean, our bodies are eventually going to tell us like, all right, you tripping, but to know that it is like disobedience, because God still honors, like when he made the 7th day holy, he made it holy forever. Like it isn't something that is just, we talk about that's done in the past. Like he's like, no, like it's still a holy, set apart day. And how oftentimes we don't observe that because of our desire to work for whatever reason.
Good. Well, yeah, I mean, God teaches the Israelites a lot, teaches us a lot in this provision, and we'll encounter some other stories tomorrow of God having to provide kind of in some interesting situations. But I do love it. It ends in chapter 16 with a reminder that this goes on for 40 years. Like, just to be clear, like, although we're going to get some other stories that will happen between that, he does make it clear, like, this manna, God provided like this for 40 years for them in that way. So, but yeah, finishing chapter 16 brings us to the conclusion of today. And so definitely want to ask you and invite you to come back tomorrow as we wrap up this week and the last 4 chapters of our reading this week. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful for you, and again, stick around for some additional information. But till then, see you tomorrow.
Thank you for joining us for the VIBEZ Daily Podcast. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, or download our favorite, the VIBEZ Church app. Visit vibes.church/devoted for additional episodes, notes, details, and the latest merch. Join us next time as we continue our journey through the Bible.